We are, of course, going to start then with Alexander Isak. And this extraordinary story, Charlie, escalated, didn't it, last night? Because Isak broke his silence, accusing Newcastle of broken promises and a breakdown in trust. In his words, the relationship can't continue, and he insists that change is in the best interests of everyone. Newcastle, of course, have responded. They say that the club never made a commitment to Isak that he could leave this summer. The drama unfolded during the PFA Awards as expected. Isak wasn't at the ceremony in Manchester, but he was named in the Team of the Year. A matter of minutes after that was announced, the drama, he posted a statement on his Instagram. This is what he said at 8:30 last night. I'm proud to be recognised by my fellow professionals with a place in the PFA Premier League Team of the season 24-25. First and foremost, I want to thank my teammates and everyone at Newcastle United who supported me along the way. I'm not at the ceremony tonight with everything going on. I didn't feel like it was going to be right for me to be there. I've kept quiet for a long time while others have spoken. That silence has allowed people to push their own version of events, even though they know it doesn't reflect what was really said and agreed behind closed doors. The reality is that promises were made, and the club has known my position for a long time. He goes on to say to now act as if these issues are only emerging is misleading. When promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship can't continue. That's where things are for me right now, and why change is in the best interests of everyone, not just myself. That wasn't the end of the drama, would you believe it? 11:30 last night, Newcastle responded. They are adamant that the club never made a promise to Isak that he could leave St James's Park, and that they appeared to have left the door open for him to be reintegrated into the first team. This is their statement. They say, we are disappointed to have been alerted to a social media post by Alexander Isak this evening. We are clear in response that Alex remains under contract and that no commitment has ever been made by a club official that Alex can leave Newcastle United this summer. We want to keep our best players, they say, but we also understand players have their own wishes and we listen to their views. As explained to Alex and his representatives, we must always take into consideration the best interests of Newcastle United, the team and our supporters in all decisions. And we've been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. We do not foresee these conditions being met. This is a proud football club, Newcastle say, with proud traditions, and we strive to retain our family feel. Alex remains part of the family and will be welcomed back when he's ready to rejoin his teammates. I mean, it is incredible, Charlie Austin, isn't it, that we're here now in this moment with 12 days until the window closes. More from Charlie in a second, but let's get to the northeast, shall we, and speak to our reporter, Keith Downie. Keith, a very good morning to you, my friend. It keeps rumbling on, this story. Extraordinary turn of events last night. Where does this leave the situation now?
Yeah, you're right. It does keep rumbling on, doesn't it? It feels very much like a line in the sand was drawn last night. Clearly, there's a standoff between both parties. In many ways, I actually think it's positive that we've heard from both parties, so we actually know where they stand. Now, there is still a few grey areas there with regards to what the broken promises and the broken trust is there that Alexander Isak is alluding to. My reading of that situation was the contract renewal that he believes he was promised over a year ago. Newcastle responded by saying that he was never promised a move away from the club. So it feels like there's still a bit of a grey area there. Where does it leave the situation? Well, it leaves Alexander Isak still training on his own away from his teammates. The Newcastle players have been arriving in the last half an hour or so here at the training ground to go through their paces this morning ahead of their next match, ironically against Liverpool at home, Monday Night Football live on Sky Sports. That is going to be a tasty fixture with everything going around. But it'll be interesting to see how Alexander Isak digests that reply from Newcastle last night. It felt very much like a hardening of their stance, and it feels very much like it will be difficult for Isak to leave Newcastle United this window now on the back of what Newcastle had to say last night. And I was just listening to you there, Will, just going through the statements from last night, and the key line from me came from from Newcastle in their statement just after 11:30 last night, where they said, we have been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired, and we do not foresee those conditions being met. Now, those conditions are that Liverpool or any buyer comes to Newcastle with an offer that they can't refuse. We've said before on multiple occasions that Newcastle are looking for £150 million for Alexander Isak, which of course would smash the Premier League transfer record. And the second of those is that Newcastle have an adequate replacement in the door. And of course we know they've tried for Hugo Ekitike, we know they've tried for Benjamin Sesko. They got right down to the wire in both those transfers, only to lose out to, ironically, Liverpool and then Manchester United. Had Newcastle managed to get one of those two players in and Liverpool came in with an acceptable offer, I think Alexander Isak probably would have gone this window. Newcastle would have facilitated that. But with the days ticking down now, as you rightly say, just 12 days to go, it sounds, from what Newcastle say last night, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to part with their star man because they've not managed to meet those two conditions. So, yeah, it feels like a standoff. I wouldn't say it's 100% dead. I wouldn't say that Isak will definitely remain a Newcastle United player. But what I would say on the back of both those statements last night, Newcastle, angered by what Alexander Isak had to say, they responded themselves, and what I would say is it's now harder for Isak to leave now than perhaps it would have been 24 hours ago.
Keith, one thing is for sure, out of those 12 days that you mentioned, you are not having a single second off. That is for sure. You will be all over Sky Sports News until deadline day. And isn't it amazing, the narrative? We've got that game at St James's Park between Newcastle and Liverpool, the Monday Night Football. Where will Alexander Isak be watching that game from? What colour shirt will he have on? Will he be on the pitch? Who knows? Unlikely, of course. And we've had, crazy transfers over the years. The Sol Campbell deal back in the early 2000s to Arsenal from Spurs, Tevez. But have you ever known a story like this, Keith, in the time covering, certainly in the North East?
Do you know what, if I'd been given £1 for every time I'd been asked in the street what's happening with Alexander Isak, I could have probably bought him myself and handed him over to Liverpool. That's how much this story has dominated the North East. It's dominated the Newcastle supporters' minds. And look, I have to say, just looking at some of the responses on social media to Newcastle's statement last night, it feels very positive from the Newcastle fans. They are really angry with the way Alexander Isak has acted. He was about to go down as a legendary player for this club. Of course, he scored the winner in the cup final back in March to bring the trophy back, the first silverware won by Newcastle in 7 long decades. And here we are just 4 months later talking about him being on strike, him losing the support of the fan base, and will he ever play for Newcastle United again? So to answer your question, no, I've never known anything like this. All the strands to the story, Liverpool coming in with a £110 million bid, Isak refusing to travel to Korea as part of Newcastle's pre-season tour, Isak coming home from Glasgow when they were playing Celtic because he was angry that Liverpool came in and took Ekitike instead of him, and he felt that he was the next man in the door at Liverpool, him training on his own here. There's been, and then the statements last night, that's just to name but a few of the strands to this story that will drag on. And I think the next big question we need to ask, and we need to find out, and we probably won't find out certainly for a few weeks yet, is will Alexander Isak, if he stays this window, pull on the black and white stripes of Newcastle United again? I would have to say that is in question after what he said last night about promises being broken, trust broken, and the relationship is pretty much ended as a result of that. It felt very final what Alexander Isak was saying last night. So look, Newcastle saying he will be welcomed back and integrated back into the side, but again that falls on Alexander Isak and it's his decision. Eddie Howe said that on Saturday after the draw against Aston Villa. He said only one man, only one person can change this. And that is Alexander Isak, and so far he's not shown any willingness to do that. So let's see what happens. Let's see if Liverpool come back to the table. Newcastle still haven't managed to bring in one striker this summer, never mind the two that they need. Will they have a decision to make if they manage to bring in one and Liverpool make an offer that they can't refuse? Potentially. Will they be able to let Isak go if they bring in nobody? No. So a lot depends on what Newcastle managed to do in the last 12 days. But I have to say that hardening of the stance from Newcastle United last night feels like it's drawn a line in the sand. And it feels very much like it's going to be more difficult for Isak to leave now than, as I say, than it did probably a day or two ago.
Keith, top man, thank you very much. Keith Downie live up in the northeast for us. Charlie Austin's been sitting here like a coiled spring. Charlie, you've had so much to say about Alexander Isak, and one thing I've noticed this week and last week you were saying was, let's wait till we hear from the horse's mouth. We have done now, so what's the Austin take on it?
The way I see it is this is last straw, and he's cemented what he's saying. He's, look, I want to leave. The relationship's broken, trust has been broken, people have gone back on his word, and then Newcastle have come out and said, that isn't a conversation that's happened, we want you to stay, we'll welcome you straight back. Like, that's obviously what's going to happen. If he's still part of Newcastle when the window shuts, he will be back playing. Regardless of what anyone thinks, the fans think, etc., he's going to come back and play if the window's shut. The biggest picture of all...
You're certain on that?
I am, because
obviously,
the World Cup...
He's got to play, obviously, for Sweden with the World Cup,
yeah.
But... You think he just
he's not going
to
refuse. He's not going to refuse to play when the window's shut. The World Cup's at the end. That's the big picture. He's going to come. He's still been training. Yes, he won't be have match minutes or anything like that. But the players will integrate him straight back in also. It's Alexander Isak. He's top player, top centre forward. They know with him in the team they can do well again this season. So for me, it's Isak real pushing it now to be like, I want to go. The relationship's broken. How it goes between these next 11, 12 days will be one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, but from a player's perspective and the timing of all of this last night, as I read out...
He knows what he's doing, Will. Like, he knows...
Yeah, but what's he hoping for with a statement like that?
He's hoping he can get this deal done. He's still being told from behind the scenes on his part, must be that we can get this deal done. This is what we need to do to get this deal done. Can we put out a statement? Let's put our statement together from our stance. Listen, Newcastle didn't wait too long to come back with theirs, did they? And really rubber stamp theirs to say, look, this is where we are on the situation. But look, he's trying to get out as much as possible now, and that's it.
And also, Charlie, before we speak to a Newcastle fan, it's what he expects from the club. How does he expect Newcastle to react when he's put something like that out during the PFA Awards? I
think he's gone too far on that side. He's trying to think, right, it's really broken now. The relationship's broken down. There's no coming back from this. And the biggest thing out of it all is there's only 12 days to go, and if they don't get no replacements in, he certainly ain't going nowhere. So you're almost going to have to go back on what he said. Don't be surprised in 4 weeks' time he's coming back and just saying it was part of the plan to try and get out. But the most I take out, does he leave? I'm unsure, but I will be sure that when the window shuts, if he's still there, he'll be putting the black and white shirt on again.
Come on then, Geordie boys and girls, let's hear from you. Let's speak to a Newcastle fan. Pete, we spoke to you last week. You were very unhappy about this situation. We've now heard from Alexander Isak. Charlie Austin there saying that he will be playing for Newcastle again if it doesn't develop. You know, will you have that? Firstly, what's your take, Pete, on what Isak said last night?
For me personally, furious at his attempt to try and sort of get his last chance at a move in this window. It just smacks of desperation from Alexander Isak and his representatives that they've gone to these sorts of lengths. So from a Newcastle fan perspective, seeing the way that he's behaved this summer, it just smacks of desperation. And Newcastle fans are furious about this. They absolutely are, because he has completely let the fans down. He's completely let the players down. And just as importantly, he's let the manager down. And just to talk about that statement really quickly, the one thing that he hadn't mentioned at all in that statement was the fans. And the fans backed him all the way through. Ever since he stepped foot in the Premier League, we've backed him, loved him. He has been lauded as a legend. And he can't even be bothered to acknowledge us in a statement. I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Pete, he has obviously been lauded by the fans, of course, and rightly so, for what he's done on the pitch. But this is not something new. If we're going on about, I know the club saying there's no agreement, the players saying there is, but this is something that as soon as the season's finished back in May, this is something that's happening all the way then. How has it still carried on to this? Why has Newcastle not just said, right, you are not going nowhere, and told him straight the where it is? They've almost said, if it's 150 million, that's it, and we're going. Why did they even bother setting a price tag for it? Do you think, Pete, if the window shuts, and he's still a Newcastle player, you're having him down the middle for Newcastle for the starting 11, aren't you? Let's be honest.
I was smiling as you were talking about it, Charlie, because once this window shuts, he is going to play for Newcastle United again. Whether I want him to, whether the fans want him to, he will be playing for Newcastle United again for his own benefit and for the benefit of the club.
And you'll laud him? And you'll laud him if he puts the ball in the back of the net? Everyone will get behind him again?
That's where it's different. Like, we will, Newcastle United fans, and look, I've supported this club over 30 years. We have backed every single player, whether we've liked them or not, whether they've annoyed us or not. When they put that shirt on and they get onto the pitch, we will want every single player to give 100% and do the job for the team. And that will happen. Whether we forgive Alexander Isak for this, that's another matter. And that's going to take a little bit longer for Newcastle United fans. You know, it might be quicker for the manager and the player, but Newcastle United fans will never, ever forget this quickly, because this is the worst we've ever experienced, certainly in the most recent era, of a player behaving in this manner. This doesn't just get wiped or swept under the rug at all. And he's only made things worse as the summer's gone on. So yes, we'll back any player that gets onto the pitch and plays for Newcastle United, but we don't have to like it.
Pete, I'm just thinking as well, looking at the Newcastle statement, right, and playing devil's advocate from the club's point of view, they're saying that their conditions haven't been met. So reading between the lines, we haven't had enough money. There's not enough on the table as a bid from Liverpool. Just out of curiosity, how much do you think Alexander Isak is actually worth?
He's worth as much as the club value him, in my opinion.
Which is what we think 150, right? Because if there's players flying around in this transfer window for 60, 70 million pounds, I don't support Newcastle, but I think he probably is worth about 150 million pounds, right? So ultimately, does this just pan out where we get to a point closer to the 1st of September, Liverpool come in with 130 plus 10 add-ons, etc., and he just goes because they've got the money that they think he's worth. He wants to go. Newcastle are saying, we need more money. It's as simple as that now, isn't it?
It was as simple as that. If Liverpool had the money, which we believe been told all summer that they have.
Well, they've recouped 240 million quid, Pete. They've got the money.
So they have the money. So then you've got to ask the question, why has this gone on so long? Why have they gone with such a low offer of 110 million when they know what this figure has been? This figure's not new. This figure's not new for this summer. It's been 6, 8, 9 months ago that it was being reported that Newcastle United would only start a conversation at around £150 million. So this is not new information. Anyone that's been
Pete,
interested
this is a knock-on effect as well also, because let's just say we get to September 1st and Liverpool offer the money. Now you're going to need to replace him. You haven't replaced Callum Wilson yet. Yes, Young Wissa's going through that scenario and whether yes or no that deal comes in. But it's the knock-on effect that actually, do you know what? If he does go, yes, the finances come in, but you need replacements. And then if he doesn't go, you're still in that scenario of he's got to get back in and perform the way he did last season. Because let's be honest, if he doesn't perform the way he does last season, he stays at Newcastle, the finger is heavily going to be pointed that you down.
The fee goes down as well, Charlie.
Yeah, of course, but it'd be the fee goes down and the downing of tools. You're not performing the way you did last year because you're still sulking about not getting your move.
Well, and this is where it kind of lies into the next point in terms of how Newcastle United have responded. Yes, absolutely, the 150 million and getting that deal done would have been the situation that I think everyone would have wanted, seeing as how Alexander Isak's behaved. But actually now, at this point, you've just talked about it, we need 2 strikers. We've got, 12 days left of the window? Like, that is not going to happen, in my opinion, between now and the end of the window.
Well, Charlie and I were talking about that, Pete, exactly. You know, if rumours are to be believed, not even rumours, you know, on the transfer show, we're talking about Jurgen Strand-Larsen at Wolves, and they've actually only officially just bought him, so he's under a long contract. It's going to take a lot of money to get him away. That's the level of player that you're looking at now. They don't exist, those strikers. Pete, we've got to wrap things up, but just to finish, and look, just to put the point across again, Alexander Isak, do you have any sympathy with him, really, the fact that he's saying broken promises, etc.? All right, it may have come from a previous regime under Staveley. Do you have any sympathy with that? And what is the ideal scenario between now and transfer deadline day? Take the 150 or try somehow and reintegrate him?
OK, firstly, do I feel any sympathy for Alexander Isak? Absolutely not. His behaviour this summer this summer and how he's behaved to Newcastle fans, players and manager means that I show no sympathy for him. I would have if he'd have gone about things in the right manner. That's gone for me. The last thing for me is that actually I'm so proud of my football club. I'm so proud of my owners for that statement last night, because what that means is that for once in a long time, the clubs have taken back power. It's no longer player power as it has been for so many years. The club has made the statement. So now I want the club to see this through. He stays at Newcastle United. He plays for Newcastle United, and we let him go when we're ready to let him go.
Have you got Isak 14 on the back of that shirt?
No, throughout the years, I've had players on the back and they've all ended up leaving the club. So I no longer have names on the back. So thankfully, I will continue to do that.
Pete, good call. Thank you very much, mate. We'll see how this plays out, won't we? Transfer deadline day, 12 days away. Right, stay with us.